Today we're going to continue in Proverbs, and we're looking at the power of our words. And I know maybe some of you are already thinking, wait a minute, like this is like we've already talked on this, or we've kind of touched on this several times. Proverbs is full of it. We have to return to it, and we're looking at it through a different lens. But I'll tell you what, we look before at speaking life. We also looked at being willing to receive and give feedback and being good friends to each other. But today is more about the actual words we use ourselves. The key verse as we begin is Proverbs 18:21, which reads that the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. That verse is powerful because it's saying that your words have the power for both. And that is kind of where we're starting today. When you think about it, your words have the power of life and death. Put another way, words are tools. And when we use our tools to build or to tear down, right? It's our choice. And that's the good news. It is our choice. It is on our court. And by God's grace, we will let his power make us builders and not those who tear down with words, who use our words for life and not death. And Proverbs has clear warnings as well as encouragements for us to follow. So we're just going to jump right in. And we're actually going to take two specific directions today, okay? And we're going to camp out a long time on each. And here's the first direction, okay? And it's this, to put a leash on that thing, okay? So that is where we're starting, okay? With this thought that you need to put a leash on that thing. Because Scripture says, and this is true in James 3:2, Scripture says that the trait of a perfect person is connected to their mouth never being at fault. James 3:2 says we all stumble in many ways. If anyone is never at fault in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. So the conclusion I draw from when I look at that verse, man, how am I able to keep my whole body in check? First, I have to never be at fault in what I say, which means I'm not even close to perfect, but it also means I need to find a way to put a leash on that thing to guard my mouth. And what I need to be by leash is we need to practice reining in our words, right? And the best way to rein in our words is actually see where is it that I go sideways in my words, so I can learn to rein that in. It's like when we had a beagle, okay? So this picture is a picture of my beagle Sheriff, who has since passed on, but boy, he was a sweetie. And anybody ever had a beagle or any kind of hound? Okay, it's awesome. Yeah, fun. Oh yeah, there's that word again. It's awesome and terrible because hounds just have their own idea of what's important and what they're going to do about it. So when we first owned him, he got out of our fenced area and he was out in the woods and we heard him and he was like dying. Like we heard him just, he's crying and we're like, we've got to save him. And Christy's like, go. Okay, so I'm trudging through the woods and I finally find him and I carry him home and I'm like, I got him, but he seems fine. She's like, okay. And then he got out again another time and we hear him and we finally realize he's a beagle. He's baying. He's not dying. He's finding sense and he's thrilled. So that sound that sounds like death is joy. It's pure joy. It's not joy when you hear it, but it's just pure joy. And through the years, we had to learn, we have to build a better fence. And then he found that if he got a running start and jumped on our refuse pile, he could clear the fence. Because he was active and he was motivated. So then we had to get rid of that. And then we moved here. And what we found is that if we want to take him on a walk or go somewhere, we had to have him on a leash. Because a leash reminded Sheriff, oh yeah, I don't get to run off there. You know, they're trying to guide me somewhere. I can't go here. I can't go here. So knowing what we need most a leash for can help us. Like for Sheriff, I would know if he saw a bird or if he caught a scent. He had a default, right? But we all have some defaults too, whether we inherited them by how we were raised, whether they are the default responses that we practiced and rehearsed until they are how we respond to certain situations like traffic or arguments or whatever. However we find we use our words. Scripture, especially in Proverbs, teaches us we need to find ways to put leashes on it. And when we know what we need a leash for, then we can pray and put our focus and energy there and ask God to guide us, okay? And the great thing about Proverbs, it gives us lots of leashes. So I'm actually going to list 4 of them, and here's the first one. God, help me to listen before I speak. That is the first leash. Help me to listen before I speak. Proverbs 18:13 says, to answer before listening, that's folly and shame. It is so good to feel heard. And this is actually a gift we can give others, to hear someone out or to know about a situation before you speak to it. And it's so crucial that we have information and that other people's perspectives are also in our mind, not just to speak, but to listen. I love this quote from Stephen Covey, the author. He said, people don't listen to understand, they listen to reply. And the collective monologue is everyone is talking and no one is listening. So one of the most important leashes that I have in my life is simply this prayer that says, God, help me to listen before I speak. Number 2, God, help me in learning to stay calm and have restraint. Maybe the first one wasn't your leash, but this one's yours. You're like, I do listen. That's where I get in trouble. Then I hear the stuff. Proverbs 17:27 reminds us, hey, whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. I've said the things like, I just can't control myself when I get in these situations. Well, what I've found is that self-control is one of the 9 lists of the fruit of the Spirit, which means the fruit God grows in us. And so if something's not growing, we have to find out why. We don't just say, like, think if you saw a tree and you knew it was a fruit tree and you knew it grew apples and it wasn't growing apples. You wouldn't say, well, that's just some of them don't work. No, you would say, wait a minute. It's an apple tree. There's got to be a reason the fruit's not growing, right? But it's amazing how I have made own excuses about my life. And I can learn, the good news, in Jesus to be an understanding person. I can learn to be calm. I can learn to have restraint. I can be a person who doesn't run off at the mouth. And we must come to a place of believing if God asks something of us, his grace will be there to empower us. Otherwise, he would be a dad who is out to frustrate us, and he's not. So if he calls us to something by his grace, now I don't mean like overnight by his grace, but I do mean that he will work in you and work in me to where we can have this leash that reins us in to say, I will be somebody who is calm and have restraint, because a fruit that the Spirit is growing in me is self-control. Number 3, God, help me in how I speak to others. Proverbs 11:12 reads that it is foolish to belittle one's neighbor. A sensible person keeps quiet. So how we speak to others is another leash that is worth keeping on. There was actually an article once in U.S. News and World Report that followed the work of 2 psychologists, and they did a specific study of newlyweds over the first decade of marriage. And from the article, I'm going to read from the article. It says, in order to uncover the processes that destroy unions, marital researchers study couples over the course of years and even decades to retrace the star-crossed steps of those who have split up back to their wedding day. What they're discovering is unsettling. None of the factors one would guess might predict a couple's durability actually does, not in how in love a newlywed couple say they are, or how much affection they exchange, how much they fight, or what they fight about. In fact, couples who endure and those who won't look remarkably similar in the early days. Yet when these psychologists, Cliff Notarius of Catholic University and Howard Markman of the University of Denver, when together they studied newlyweds over the first decade of marriage, they found a very subtle but telling difference at the beginning of their relationships. Among couples who would ultimately stay together, 5 out of every 100 comments made about each other were put-downs. Among couples who would later split, 10 out of 100 comments were insults. And that gap magnified over the following decade until couples heading downhill were flinging 5 times as many cruel and invalidating comments at each other as happy couples. Hostile put-downs, and this is what this is the quote from Notarius, hostile put-downs act as cancerous cells that, if unchecked, erode relationships over time. And they ended up, this is from a book they co-authored called We Can Work It Out. In the end, relentless, unremitting negativity takes control, and the couple can't find a way to get through the week without those major blow-ups. Now, the good news is some of you are like, hey, I can testify to that. I mean, I've lived that, or I've been there, and I've gotten through that, or found ways to move past that or around that. What probably happened is you recognize this is a leash I need. I can't have this kind of negativity spilling out of me. But this is not just marriage by any means. This is when we go to work, the negativity that comes out of us. Or this is when we interact with people that are in our community. Or this is how we respond to the things that we see around us day to day. How we speak to others has to be leashed. Again, you're noticing this all comes from a fountain, right? Like, this isn't stuff we just do on our own. This is stuff that we discover there is the goodness in Jesus that spills out of us and gives us this leash. By the way, for any of you that are feeling like, man, I came to like listen today, and all I'm finding out is like things not to do. It's not over. Remember, I said there was 2 paths we're going to take. This is just the first hard one, and it's crucial. And then number 4 is this: God, help me in how I speak about others, not just to others, but help me in how I speak about others. Proverbs 17:9, whoever conceals an offense promotes love, but whoever gossips about it will separates friends. I don't know if you've ever done this, and I'm sure people have done this because I'm not like a gossip-free person. I'm learning to be, but I've been there where you're just talking away about somebody. But when I hear somebody talking to me about somebody, I don't know if you do this, the first thing I do is I go, oh, I'm probably not going to tell you anything, right? Because don't you feel that like, oh, if they'll gossip to me, they'll gossip about me. And Lord help me, because I've been there too. I've been the person who's just freely talking about somebody else, and I've even been mid-sentence and say, oh, and that's not for me to share or even evaluate that person. I'm sorry. I have to reel that back in because it's spilling out as I talk. And beware. We have to beware. There's additional leashes, bonus ones with this, right? So the leash is, God, help me how I speak about others. But then you have the gossip excuses like, well, it's true. They're terrible. Or, well, they deserve it. Or, well, I just want to pray for brother so-and-so. And the only way to pray for them is to inform you on all this juicy stuff I just found out. But let's head in the second direction, because this is so crucial. It's much more than this. There's 2 directions. And here's what I mean. That tool thing that I talked about. We figure out as we grow in Jesus that our words can bring death. In other words, a hammer can break stuff, but that's not necessarily what a hammer is made for, right? I mean, a sledgehammer, yes. You should use that to break stuff. That's where the analogy does not work. But other than that, tools weren't made to tear down. They were mostly made to build. And here's where it's great. Our lives are not just to be lived guarding from the negative. It's seeking the good. It's being the builder. So let's put it back in a dog analogy. Here's my other dog. This is Bella. This is my sweet pup. And many of you know her. She's our German Shepherd. And we don't just need to put her on a leash and make sure she spends her days not going bad places. Because Bella's somebody who has jobs, and she loves her jobs. One of her jobs is to greet me at my door when I drive home every day without fail. Like, she'll come running out of the woods and come, and all I do is I open the door, and as I open the door, she puts her nose on my hand, like saying hi, and then she curls around and waits. And she does this with my son, she does this with Christy. Every time we drive up, she's like, this is my job, right? And so the greatest joy is not like us trying to leash her so she doesn't go places. Our greatest joy is seeing her fulfill this little life thing she has. She protects our property. She loves to sit with us if we're outside. At night, when Christy and I are together sitting in a room, she comes and she lays down and she watches us. She was created to have a job and chase the good. She wasn't created to avoid the bad. And so none of us were created with the joy of having leashes on us so we don't do things. We're created to chase the good and to pursue the things that God has put in us in our lives to build. It's just that in order to do so, sometimes you need leashes. Sometimes we need to learn restraint in order to give our best energy into things that are honoring and building and look and act like Jesus. So that's why you had to see both those dogs, okay? And that's why this words thing, and that's why faith in general must become more than just don't do all these things. That is a terrible way to live out your faith in Jesus. If the core of your faith in Jesus is, well, just don't do bad things, you've missed a lot of the beauty of the kingdom of God, which is also, hey, you get to do all of these things. The rules still matter. They aren't the thing. They protect the thing. And that's where the difference is so powerful. Those who make the don't do the thing become worn out, right? And I'm sure some of you have been there where the rules have become the thing for you in faith, and it has worn you out and felt like, wow, I thought that following Jesus was supposed to be joyful, but it's not. It's a mess. I'm worn out. Or perhaps you followed the don't do this and you've lived the life focused on the leash only, and so you've resorted to also being caretakers of everyone else's life. Well, if I've got to wear a leash, I'm going to make sure everybody else is as miserable as me. I'm going to evaluate everyone else's leash. But friends, we only need leashes if they help us pursue the good. They protect the job. They protect the thing, but they aren't the thing. And so, yes, put a leash on that thing, but also, and that's where we're going to shift, also give your words purpose. Give your words purpose. And there's a few ways in Proverbs that we'll read that we see this. Number one, give others courage and strength. Give others courage and strength. Proverbs 12:25 reads that anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. Man, I have had that heart that just feels, worn down. I mean, the people that we honored today, those were the people who, when my heart was weighed down, said, hey, I have the right word at the right time. You're not going to stay down. Here's a good example. Ricky Henderson. This is great. Ricky Henderson, who knows who he is? Baseball player? Okay. Major League Baseball player from 1979 to 2003. He was a Mariner once, for year 2000. This is how I knew him. I knew him as an Oakland A. I think he was a Blue Jay, too. I just remember him in light blue, so it feels like, am I right? Blue Jays? He had 1,406 stolen bases in his career. And from 1979 up to May 1st, 1991, the year I graduated, right? Let's date me. He had 938 stolen bases at that point. And if he got one more, he would beat the record that was set by this next guy, Lou Brock, which was held since 1979, since his 1979 retirement. He had like a 19-year Major League Baseball career. He had the record. It had been there from the time he retired all through the time that Ricky Henderson played, okay? Do we have Lou's picture? I don't know if we do. I love it because that's how you have to run if you steal bases. You just got that engine, you know what I mean? But here's the story I want to read to you about these two men. 40,000 fans were on hand at Oakland Stadium when Ricky Henderson tied Lou Brock's career stolen base record. And according to USA Today, Lou, who had, he left baseball in 79, but he was following this young kid's career and was excited about his success. So realizing that Ricky would set a new record, they're like, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about the fact that the one thing you're known for is about to be kind of released from your life? And he said, I'll be at Oakland Stadium. Do you think I'm going to miss it now? Ricky did in 12 years what took me 19. He is amazing. He could have been fueled by jealousy or anger, but his words, he chose to have purpose with them and to give someone else courage and strength. So when the one person who could be most threatened by your success shows up to cheer you on, you're going to steal a base. You're going to break the record that day, right? So think of that moment when Ricky Henderson broke that record. I wonder if did he have Lou Brock's words in his head? Was he given strength as he saw him in the stands? I don't know, but I love that. Because that is a great picture of how our words can give each other that same kind of courage and strength. And you've got to know, because I'm sure you've experienced it like me, that people are anxious about so much in our current culture. In fact, I saw a list the other day. This was just a list of 84 different medications that are just created to treat anxiety. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's heartbreaking. I understand it. I won't belittle it. But I wonder how many times our anxiety would be relieved by a person willing to give us strength or courage with their words instead of remaining alone and feeling like this is the only way I can get through. What if we could contribute to people's peace? Will you speak peace to the storms that you see around you? I think about when Jesus was in the boat and he spoke to the storm and he said, peace be still. He could have used words to diss his disciples, right? He could have said, you guys are losers, get through it. We're going to get through it. This is fine. But instead, he spoke peace to the situation. And let us be people who speak words that make others glad, like that verse says. Number two, another way we can use our words with purpose is to give others grace, to be kind and forgiving and unassuming. Proverbs 16:24 says that gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul, and health to the body. I think I've shared this story about myself, but it's embarrassing enough I got to share it again. Do you guys remember this cereal? I'm going to put the picture up on the screen. Do you guys remember this, like, growing up? Oh, man. It was awesome, right? I didn't grow up, and here's the story. So I didn't grow up with a ton of sugared cereal growing up. I mean, we got our sugared cereals, at the right times, right places, but we just didn't have it a lot. But I remember this one, and I remember I was 4 years old. And I loved it so much, I sold out for it. We lived in some apartments on Little Rock Road, and our neighbor girl had a bunch of it, and I wanted it. She said, "What do you have to trade me?" Well, what I had was Little People, like those little toys. And I was like, "Well, I have some of these." And she's like, "That's a good trade. Let's do it." So we met under the stairs by our apartment. She had a little bag of honeycomb, and I had a couple of Little People, and we made the exchange. And she's like, "Cool, see ya, kid." And I was like, "I've got my," and then it was gone. It was really sweet, and then it was really gone, and then I wanted to play with my toys, but they were also gone. But I just loved it because I wanted to taste of it. And I don't know if you've ever, it's good, but what's even better, have you ever had real, raw, pure honey? Man, it's so good. It's so much better. I don't mean like the honey I mean like real honey. Like, anybody ever had Rick's honey? Oh man, so my buddy Rick over here has brought me honey that from his honey hives that he harvests himself, and man, they taste like whatever the bees are pollinating down there. It's amazing. When you taste that sweetness, you go, "Oh, that's so good," and it just like lights you up. Gracious words, Proverbs says, are like that. They're sweetness, but they're sweetness to the soul. They make your soul lighten. Because we need grace. We need a way where grace helps you realize, I'm not done, and I have the hope to move on. And that lightens what's going on in your soul. That's what gracious words do. And so remember the last time that your ears tasted kind words, or forgiving words, or unassuming words? We crave, it's what I call audio honey. Like, we crave that. We hear it, we take it in, and we go, "Man, that's good in my soul." What if you could be that? I think about how Jesus spoke grace to the thief on the cross. The thief on the cross was being punished for something he did on the same day. It was kind of like, I think, a 3-for-1 crucifixion, like the Romans were just getting several things done. And they viewed them all as criminals. We don't see what, Jesus was taking a false accusation to his death. But these two criminals were dying for being criminals. And one of them said, "Hey, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom?" And Jesus spoke words of grace and said to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." He was telling him, have hope. Let your soul be lifted in this moment. Let it be lightened because you're looking in the right direction. He didn't alleviate his moment of pain. He still had to go through this pain, but he went through it side by side and gave him words of grace. And a moment when he could have said, "You deserve what you're getting." Because that's what the other thief said. Remember? He said, "Leave him alone. We're getting what we deserve." He said, "No, that's not the words he needs right now. What he needs right now is words of grace to say, 'Today you'll be with me.'" And I just think that is powerful, where at moments where we could say a lot of things, and even sometimes valid things, isn't it good when we can pause and say something that is gracious? Say something that gives somebody hope that, oh, this is not the end of the road for me. So speak grace to those around you. And then number 3, give others healing. Give others healing. Proverbs 12:18 reads that the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. See, words can be forgiven, but the sad thing is, because our brains are the most amazing thing, I think, that God created, words can't always be forgotten. They can be forgiven, but they're hard to get out of our heads, right? Especially when we let them attach to us. The good news is sometimes the best truth is that words can't get out of our head, because there's certain ones that we want to remember the rest of our lives. So we use them wisely, or as wise as we can, to bring wholeness to others. I can be reckless like that, and you can't undo, like I said, you can't undo a cutting remark. It does heal, but often there's a scar. But using our words wisely brings healing. It brings hope, and we can help people to heal through their pain. Healing words can actually help someone that is worn out from being wounded, and even something as simple as, "I see you, don't give up. You've got this," can be powerful. So speak wise words of healing. If you think about that, when it says that wise words bring healing, there's only one thing that ever needs healing, and that's hurt. That's the only thing that needs healing, right? Is hurts. We don't need healing if we're not hurt. Which means that we're willing to say words that promote healing. Now think about this. Truth promotes healing, but you have to apply it at the right time and the right way. For instance, cleaning a wound can hurt. But done right, it can help it heal without infection. And often when people are hurting, the way they handle the hurt can produce an infection. Like if I'm cut, I'm cut, right? I already have a hurt. But if I don't deal with it well, the infection can be worse than the cut itself. And I'm sure you've seen that and understand that. But some of the ways that our infections of our soul cause more hurt is bitterness, unresolved anger, withdrawal. Those are some of the things in a hurt that happen that are worse than the hurt itself, right? And that's where our words can help healing, especially help prevent infection. You might have the right thing in a moment of my bitterness that takes away the bitterness so I can heal well instead of letting an infection build. Wisdom, and that's where we need wisdom, and that's why it says wisdom, like words of wisdom can bring healing. Wisdom knows how to say, ooh, this is a good thing to say right now, or ooh, this isn't the right thing to say right now, or this is a good thing, but it's not the right time or the right place. And so I'm going to be a wise healer by finding just the right time, place, and words to say to promote healing. And so the bottom line as we think through all this, and hopefully you're encouraged today to see that we aren't made for the leash. We're made for great purpose in our words. Your words are made to bless. In fact, that's the unique thing that we see all the way from the Old Testament to the New. God set apart a whole nation. He said the whole point of you even being a nation is to bless the nations around you, is to be a blessing to them and to show the goodness of the coming Messiah. They're to be an image of what God's people could look like. We get to do the same thing. We are uniquely created to be a blessing to others and to use our words for great purpose. Sometimes the leash gets us there, which is why we still need them, but the leash is never the point. And so in wrapping up today, I have two questions for you to think through, and they'll be on the screen. The first is this: which of the leashes do I need to commit to daily prayer this week? I would love if you just pick one. Because if your brain's like me, like the more things you're looking at and aiming at, like the less good you do. Pick one, whether it's the leash of God, help me listen before I speak, or help me in learning to stay calm and have restraint, or help me in how I speak to others, or help me in how I speak about others. Why don't we each just take one in your mind? And by the way, these are all written in your study guide and message notes, so you have them if you have the program today. And just circle one of them and make that your daily prayer. And then question 2 is, who do I know that needs words of either courage, grace, or healing this week? And how can I speak those into their lives?